Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
What was Brexit hoping to bring? The ability to secure free trade deals was one much touted aim, a chance to play global Britain on the big stage, bring down the cost of imported goods. The Prime Minister appears ready to sign up the first standalone post-Brexit trade deal with Australia. But it's sending jitters through many rural communities. How can hill farmers with 60 sheep compete with Australian industrialists who have 60,000? They worry their prices will be undercut, their goods will be unwanted, their consumers will go elsewhere. They fear it may be Australia today, America tomorrow, Brazil and Canada down the track, making their chances of survival harder each time. And the SNP has warned the deal will be the final nail in the coffin for many smaller Scottish farmers. Is this deal playing into their hands, making the union itself seem less attractive? And how does it all fit with a levelling up agenda meant to make people's livelihoods more secure? Well, we'll hear from sheep farmers in Australia and Scotland and a leading Brexiteer in a moment. First, Nick Waters here. Nick, what is your reading of all this right now?
Well, look, a lot is riding on this deal. And as you say, Emily, Boris Johnson is absolutely determined to get this over line to show that he can deliver on one of those key Brexit pledges, which is the UK will sign its own trade deals. And he and the government obviously want this just to be the start of many. Now, this negotiation is going to be watched very carefully around the world. Where's the UK willing to give ground in negotiations? Where is the UK going to be standing firm? Now, we've due to have a cabinet committee tomorrow to thrash out differences within the cabinet on this. Liz Truss, the International Trade Secretary, very keen to press on with this. George Eustice, the Environment Secretary, nervous about what this could mean for the farming community and talking about introducing tariff rate quotas to try and ease this zero tariff, zero quota deal for the farming community. Interestingly tonight, radio silence in Whitehall. They all seem to have gone to ground. It looks like there are some very delicate negotiations going on within the cabinet. So I've been looking at the stakes in this first standalone post-Brexit trade deal. A world apart, a lifestyle apart, and now potentially in competition. The hill farmers of Scotland and Wales, at the heart of British rural life for centuries, may soon find life is about to change. Giant farms in Australia may soon have tariff-free access to Britain if a proposed new trade deal comes into force. Their ability to produce at scale means they could undercut farmers over here, goes the cry from agricultural leaders. Cabinet ministers are split. Friends for the camera, but tough negotiations. The International Trade Secretary Liz Truss sees this deal as a crucial step if other agreements are to be signed. From his Westminster bolt hole, the Environment Secretary George Eustice is calling for late changes to protect farmers.
The leader of the SNP, Ian Blackford.
And opposition leaders sense an opening.
If reports of this Tory deal are true, farmers will lose their livelihoods. Rural businesses will collapse and ultimately families will be driven off the land. And let's be very clear, if that happens, this UK Tory government will be solely responsible.
From the Prime Minister, the usual rejoinder for an opposition politician, but also a full-throated defence of the proposed trade deal.
Why doesn't he believe in what the people of Scotland can do, Mr. Speaker? Why is he so frightened of free trade? I think there's a massive opportunity for Scotland and for the whole of the UK, and he should seize it and be proud of it.
Boris Johnson is determined to get this trade deal over the line. The ability of Britain to take to the seas once again and negotiate new deals around the world lay at the heart of his Brexit referendum campaign. But in these negotiations, no side comes bearing gifts. Raw national interests come head-to-head across the table, and sometimes some sectors lose out.
There really are no such thing as friendships while you're negotiating. The hope is that you come out of the negotiations having both secured your interests, and then you can deepen your friendships from there. But certainly that's not the same as saying that this is about making friends on the way.
And this trade expert also believes the US will see opportunities from this negotiation.
The US will definitely want a lot from the UK and will be encouraged by the fact we appear to be offering Australia a lot without too many conditions. So that suggests to the US and to other trade partners, yes, we want the deals. They can push their interests, and we won't push our own interests too hard. There may be a slight question mark in their minds as to whether UK public opinion might turn against these deals, might see them as perhaps the UK government being too weak, but there's no sign of that at the moment. In the case of the US, they will expect our food standards to change and to accept beef treated with growth hormones, chicken washed in chlorine, etc.
A former agriculture minister believes Britain has struck a good deal with Australia.
This is the first standalone trade deal. We've rolled over, I think, 65 deals that we had by virtue of being in the European Union. But I think this is the sign of things to come. Trade deals around the world benefiting people whose jobs here, benefiting. I mean, for example, imports of Australian wine were tariffed when we're in the European Union. We should see cheaper wine on our shelves competing with the French and German wine. So I think this is a sign of things to come. And of course, the real benefit will be to having wider trade deals around the Pacific Rim and that deal with the United States of America, which will be tremendously helpful, I think, to British businesses trying to export.
Steady, steady.
Shepherding in a new era, a change of direction and uncertainty for farmers as Britain learns to trade in the world of Brexit.
Nick Watt with that report, and joining us now from Darwin, Australia, very early in the morning, is Tony Marr, CEO of the Australian National Farmers Federation. Thanks for being up for us. I guess the farmer you are anyway. Joining us also, Martin Kennedy, President of the National Farmers Union of Scotland, live from his cattle farm in Highland, Perthshire. And I guess it's a thank you to Martin for staying up so late. Dan Hannan, leading Brexit architect, advisor to the Board of Trade and Conservative peer, joins us in the studio. Welcome to you all. Can I start with you, Tony Marr? What do you think this trade deal will mean for you, for Australian farmers?
Good evening. Thanks for having me. It will mean more options for Australian farmers. Australian farmers, we export about 2/3 of what we produce, and we have got a long and a strong history with Britain, UK, and in that time, over that long period of time, we've really focused on, being competitive and being, leading the world in some of these techniques and production. However, we've been focused on some of the Asian markets, and that's probably where our focus will lie. So for Australian farmers, more options are better, but we see the UK and the EU as, markets that might provide some opportunity in addition to the huge markets we've got in Asia.
And when you hear that word competitive, Martin, what do you think? I mean, is that worrying?
It's extremely worrying. I mean, this is not about trying to stop any trade deal. Far from it. We're very keen on trade deals going ahead. What we're deeply concerned about is the full liberalisation and unfettered access of unlimited quantity of product coming in. And we understand that, it's been said already that there's an Asian target for the market for Australian products there at the minute. That could change in the future. Political scenes change, and that door could close there, and then the markets need to go somewhere else. We could be flooded out with product coming from other areas that the scale is in a completely different comparison. And from a Scottish perspective, we could be disproportionately affected here. Agriculture, and particularly where I am in Highland, Perthshire, we're 85% area of Scotland is less favoured area, dominated by livestock. And it's the engine room of the Scottish rural economy, and it's really important we don't see that undermined. And our concern is, this is the first, as already been said, this is the first standalone deal that's been done by the UK government. Yeah. When you look at other deals like Japan, that they've already looked at sensitive products like agriculture, and there's TRQs already in place. What's going to happen from this cumulative effect when we come to make deals with other countries like New Zealand, Canada, the US? That could complicate things and compound things greatly.
Dan Hannan, how are you going to reconcile those ideas? Because Tony Marr sounds really excited. He's talking about competition. Martin Kennedy sounds fearful of what's coming down the track. Now, I know that Downing Street's promised there would be protections. What are those protections?
Well, first of all, this is a great trade deal. It's going to be a cutting-edge, world-beating trade deal, covers investment. Well, I'm going to come on to that, but let's just put, because you heard Ian Blackford there saying it's going to be terrible for Scotland. It's going to remove Australian tariffs on Scotch whisky. It's going to create new opportunities for Edinburgh financial services firms. It's going to, in fact, it's going to help every region in the UK, Scotland and London the most. So everyone stands to gain, and as we come out of the coronavirus recessions, we should be pulling every lever. But on the question of,
just because the numbers are very different, our exports, according to government forecasts, could rise by 7%. Their exports to us could rise by 83%. That is totally lopsided. It is asymmetric. So they're not going to be that impressed by whiskey.
Emily, the way you've just phrased that is demonstrating exactly what's wrong with this debate, right? We are not opening our markets to Australia as a favour to Australia. We're opening our markets as a favour to ourselves, which may happen incidentally to benefit some Australian... Well, hang on. How is it a bad thing to be getting high quality, more diverse products at an affordable price from around the world?
Can I just tell that to Martin? Explain to Martin why it won't hurt.
If I can say this to Martin directly, right? We import at the moment about 250,000 tonnes of beef. Australia doesn't even take its existing lamb quota, but on that beef, 91% of it is imported from the EU. 1% of it is imported from Australia. And I just cannot understand how the NFU can say that we should have tariff-free and quota-free trade from every EU country, but not from anyone else. That is a completely illogical position.
Can I start with, incidentally, your figures are actually wrong. It's near 360,000 tonnes we import, and over 70% of that comes in from Ireland, who have a very similar situation to ourselves, where our standards are very similar. Our animal welfare is very similar to Ireland, but we've got a completely stark comparison between the food production systems in Australia and the food production systems here. The scale is enormously different. And we're very concerned about that, because the environment, we've got three things at the top of the agenda right now. It's our environment, it's climate change, and at the heart of that, from a Scottish and UK perspective, is food production. They're all integrated, and we need to be very mindful that our economic values that we have, social economic values that's delivered from agriculture in the UK is massive, and we're really concerned. You're saying there's going to be safeguards. We haven't had any assurance at all.
Wait a second. Let me bring in Tony, because I think this is an important point, because the RSPCA has said, and this is talking about protection of animals, that Australia has much lower standards, whether it's chlorinated chicken, whether it's sow stalls for pregnant pigs, whether it's the journey times for live animals. Why should British consumers be prepared to lower their standards?
It won't be a lowering in the standards. We've got incredibly high animal welfare standards. And can I just say, we're on the same page as Martin. We're open markets. If UK consumers, want to choose products, then they will. If they don't, they won't. Australian farmers have got strong, long markets in Asia. We see it as an opportunity if it's there. If the market's not there, we don't see us coming in and swamping UK farmers. Definitely not. We've got so much in common that we can work on together. This is not about disadvantaging UK farmers. And in our view is that won't happen.
I mean, is it worth it then to make the farmers go through all that sort of sense of being left out of this conversation and this deal, when actually, again, your own Department of Trade figures, you advise them, say the boost to GDP is about 0.01%. I mean, there's so little gain, isn't there? I don't believe farmers
are being left out of the conversation, and I don't believe that on this issue the NFU speaks for most British farmers any more than it did on the Brexit issue. But if I thought that the result of this deal would mean the end of the hill farms that we have in our upland areas, I wouldn't support it. Those upland areas will be supported in the glorious form that we all enjoy and that we treat as a Commonwealth by the system that we have of direct support for people who are acting as stewards of this landscape from which we all benefit.
Sorry, what does that mean?
In other words, we have a subsidy system that is designed to ensure that land stays the way it is, that the people on it are rewarded for doing it.
Martin.
I just want to make this really important point. Prices in Asia are much higher than here. We just heard from the Australian Farming Union that is their focus, right? It's where they sell 3/4 of their stuff. That is the huge opportunity for British livestock farmers. Beef prices in South Korea, in Japan, are about twice what they are at the farm gate here. This Australia deal is our gateway into the Pacific trade nexus, which is where the growth is
Martin
coming.
with that. What do you say to that, Martin?
If you think for 1 minute that there's not a worry and there is no concern about undermining our markets here in Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, the rest of the UK, why is there a concern, or why is there a concern that there should not be a TRQ involved? If there's not a concern, why would the Australians be worried about a TRQ being in place if there's no worry? Tariff rate quota, a limit on the products that's coming in. And again, it comes back to that cumulative effect, because once we have this trade deal through with Australia, the US, Canada, Brazil, whoever is the next trade deal is going to be with New Zealand, are going to want that same unfettered access. And that's the concern. It's that cumulative effect. And it doesn't take very much to tip that balance before we're oversupplied and the demand doesn't meet that supply, and that's when prices actually plummet. Now, you're correct to say our consumers are much more mindful now about where their food comes from, and that's probably due to COVID, which has been a disaster. We know that right across the globe. The reality is people are more aware of where the food comes from now, and they appreciate that, and they're more looking at standards. They're looking at environmental standards, climate change standards, and where we are in the UK, particularly in Scotland, we're proud of these standards that we have, and we cannot afford to have that undermined right now.
And when you hear that, Tony, you guys are doing the undermining in a second. You're the ones saying it's going to be cheaper, it's going to be easier, it's going to be bigger. I mean, you don't have to stick to the same standards that they're working to.
Yeah, I didn't say it was going to be cheaper. I said that we were very competitive on the global market, and we've worked hard to do that. There was mention of subsidies and things before. Australian farmers get zero subsidies, so we are lean and we are competitive. But let me say again that we produce our beef and lamb and all of our agricultural products to the highest quality and global standards. So there's not a distinction there. They're different production systems, yes. Granted, but the environmental standards are, I would say, if not tougher, as tough as anywhere in the world. So you have to recognise the different production systems. Yeah. But let me say again, this is an opportunity for Australian farmers only if the British consumers are there. We have huge markets. We're an export-orientated business here in Australia, but we, have put this in perspective. There's about half a container full of beef and lamb that goes to the UK, and there's millions of tonnes that go to other markets around the world. So this is an opportunity, but it's not something that Australian farmers are thinking is going to change the world.
Dan, these two guys are broadly on the same side, on the same page, but you've heard what Martin is worried about. It is first Australia, then it's America, then it's all the big industrial farming nations like Brazil and Canada and all the rest of it. I'm just surprised that you, as a Conservative and Unionist, don't see how this could trigger something very advantageous for the SNP, which is people
I think it would be the opposite. First of all, restoring our trade with Australia, in a way, is simply removing the artificial blockage that we put there when we joined the EEC in 1973, and we had to apply European tariffs in stages. So all we're doing is kind of removing the dam and allowing the stream to flow back to its ancient bed. But I think Scotland, like every part of the UK, will find itself increasingly focused on the fastest growing markets in the world. 2/3 of the global middle class by the end of this decade will be in Asia. That's where the markets are. We have exceptionally close links, not only to Australia, but to a number of Pacific countries which are common law and English speaking, to Malaysia, to Canada, to Singapore and so on. That is the future. And I think that people in Scotland, as in England and Wales, will realise as time goes by that was the right call to have made.
Let's put that one to Martin, because we've heard from Dan Hannan and from the Prime Minister earlier, in a sense, the same message. Don't be frightened of free trade.
Yeah, but can I ask, what are the measures that's going to be in place that's going to make sure that this doesn't happen? And I accept that Australia is an exporting country. They're looking to Asia, they're looking to China. They've got a fantastic market there right now. If that changes through some political dialogue that goes wrong, and we do find ourselves with a lot of product coming into the UK, what are the measures that are in place to make sure we're not undermined? We've been told there's going to be safeguards. The easiest safeguard to put in place would be a TRQ. If there's no worry about having an oversupply coming into the UK, surely a TRQ would solve that problem. And then we could all be work with a deal that's going to be the benefit to everybody. But
Okay,
at the
so
minute,
some kind of mechanism that kicks in if it's suddenly flooded.
So almost every country in the world, in some way or another, supports agriculture. There's a handful of exceptions like New Zealand, but in most countries there is a measure of agricultural support. Now, you can do that through tariffs and quotas. The problem with that is that the revenue doesn't go to the farmers and the cost falls on the poorest people for whom food represents the highest proportion of their weekly budget. Or you can do it through a system of direct support, basically just subsidising people in return for the service that they provide of keeping our exceptional landscapes.
I'm
and
just
the second
listening.
is
there going to be a
far surer way of
mechanism?
doing it.
Is there going to be something
that
kicks
is
in?
the mechanism. We outside the EU, we have designed a system of farm support that will recognise the fact that we in this country have a unique cultivated landscape.
Thank you all very much indeed. Thanks for joining us.